Imagine for a moment you are a tourist in London, the seemingly endless metropolis resonant with a vivacious pulse and twinkling city lights, where ancient stone streets whisper tales of yesteryear and modern skyscrapers soar into the vast cerulean skyline. Indeed, on your journey to our sumptuous capital, you'll likely find yourself strolling by iconic landmarks, such as the stately Buckingham Palace, the majestic Tower of London, or the illuminated London Eye, all images that immortalize the city's indomitable spirit. Yet, as you wander these serpentine streets, there's a high likelihood that you're stepping on property owned by a quintessentially British family, an embodiment of the old money stature. They're the unseen marionettists pulling the strings of London's property scene, their sprawling holdings defining the essence of the city. For instance, this covert dynasty owns an astonishing 50% of the prestigious district of Mayfair, including the freeholds of the American Embassy, the Beaumont Hotel, and the Gagosian Gallery. Moreover, their sway extends over 300 acres of the wildly opulent Belgravia area, renowned for its extravagant properties. But the vast stretches of their power and influence within Albion don't just stop there. These old money English nobles have held significant sway in British society for, believe it or not, almost 1,000 years. In today's video at Old Money Luxury, we'll unveil the captivating narrative of the Grosvenors, an English family whose grasp on London's real estate is as profound as their millennia-old impact on British society. The Grosvenor family's will to power shockingly stretches back to the very beginnings of what we know as modern Britain, with their fierce ancestor Hugh Lupus being renowned as the chief huntsman to none other than William the Conqueror. His ceaseless wolf-like tenacity in shielding Cheshire from the Welsh invaders won him the coveted lands in the highly consequential year of 1066. Known endearingly as Fat Hugh, his merry crest showcased a laughing dog, an emblem which would soon yield another immense tie in Grosvenor family lore to British history, as this ancestor's crest became the muse for Lewis Carroll's unforgettable Cheshire Cat in Alice in Wonderland. Now, the family's rise to power within the nobility began with the stalwart Sir Richard Grosvenor, the first baronet, who made his grand entrance into the world on a crisp, frost-bitten January morning in 1585. After an Oxford education and position as the High Sheriff of Cheshire, Sir Richard leveraged his growing power to become knighted by King James I on a bright summer day in 1617 amidst the verdant, tranquil Vale Royal. To put this into perspective, this ancestor of the Grosvenor Empire was being knighted at the same time Shakespeare was alive and the King James Bible emerged. Now, Sir Richard further won the affections and votes of the public as a charismatic Member of Parliament for Cheshire in 1621 and acquired the prestigious baronet's title a year later. In fact, his eloquently penned diary entries from the time are still read in the 21st century as invaluable nuggets of historical wisdom. The Grosvenor family legacy was furthered by the intrepid Sir Richard Grosvenor, the second baronet, a staunch royalist during the turbulent Civil War. As the High Sheriff of Cheshire in 1643, the same position his father held, he ousted Parliament supporters from the chaotic Battle of Edgehill, standing firmly by his beliefs. He later joined forces with the stalwart Sir George Booth in the unsuccessful but audacious Royalist uprising of 1659. Succession brought forth the visionary Sir Thomas Grosvenor, the third baronet, who paved the way for their sprawling property empire. He masterminded the construction of an impressive residence where the majestic Eaton Hall in Cheshire stands today. The massive estate, adorned with manicured gardens, fertile farmland, lush woodlands and expansive parkland, contributed greatly to the growth of the illustrious Grosvenor dynasty and the prosperity of the Cheshire community. In 1677, when Sir Thomas married the elegant Mary Davies, her dowry, Ebury, bolstered the Grosvenors' expanding landholdings. This humble 500-acre patch of meadows and marshland underwent a dramatic transformation into the opulent districts of Mayfair and Belgravia. As London grew and spread its wings westwards, the Grosvenor family would wisely harness this potential and shape the city's most prestigious neighbourhoods. Now, the first modern Grosvenor, Hugh Lupus, the first Duke of Westminster, was a titan of Victorian society, acclaimed not only as a formidable landowner and astute politician, but also as an ardent racehorse aficionado. His substantial influence over London's wealthiest neighbourhoods began unfolding in the mid-1800s. You see, through strategic investment and visionary leadership, the Duke had capitalised on the shifting dynamics of the late 19th century economy. Many aristocratic families struggled to adapt to the decline of the agricultural economy. However, the Grosvenors, through a fortunate turn of events, found themselves at the heart of London's rapid urban expansion. As the Duke poured his substantial fortune into further development, under his shrewd guidance, the transformation of one of London's most exclusive districts, Belgravia, began. The marshy tracts of Mayfair were also transformed into luxurious residences. By doing so, they turned these areas, along with Pimlico, into some of London's most sought-after addresses. Furthermore, in 1852, his connection to the British monarchy was cemented when he married his cousin, Lady Constance Sutherland Leveson Gower, in a ceremony at St James's Palace, attended by Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. This event established the foundation for Grosvenor's close association with the Queen, given his mother-in-law's favoured standing within the royal court. Building on this connection, the first significant milestone of the Grosvenor family's ascension to the pinnacle of Britain's influential elites occurred in 1874. That year, Queen Victoria likely recognised the vital role that the Grosvenors played in transforming London's cityscape, and as a result, bestowed upon Hugh Grosvenor the prestigious title of Duke of Westminster. Additionally, as the 20th century dawned, the family's holdings continued to grow, acquiring more properties in Scotland and elsewhere. The Grosvenor family's vast wealth and prominence in British society thus spoke to their strategic acumen, visionary leadership, and the fortunate circumstances of their time. Now Hugh's son, Gerald Cavendish Grosvenor, the 6th Duke of Westminster, cultivated an even unprecedented fortune, skillfully steering the modern Grosvenor Empire to new heights of affluence and influence. By his time, the name Grosvenor had become a byword for first-class real estate, and in the post-war era of the 1950s, the Grosvenor domain would burgeon beyond the borders of its London heartland. Presiding over the Grosvenor Group, Gerald first guided the company as its chairman. In the inaugural edition of the Sunday Times Rich List, published in 1989, he was placed as the second wealthiest person in the United Kingdom, boasting a staggering fortune of £3.2 billion, an eye-watering £8.47 billion in today's terms. Only Queen Elizabeth II herself surpassed him. Thus, Gerald Grosvenor's visionary leadership heralded an era of significant expansion and diversification for the Grosvenor Group. The company broadened its property portfolio across multiple sectors and locales, specializing in urban property, food and ag-tech, and rural estates. Its urban property ventures included the development and management of vibrant urban sites, such as the American capital Washington, D.C., where the Grosvenor presence had been instrumental in the city's renaissance since 1988. Simultaneously, the Grosvenor food and ag-tech sector spearheaded investment in companies transforming the world of food and agriculture for the better. With a veteran investment team, they expertly managed a portfolio of over 25 companies, ushering in positive change in food and farming with a focus on human health, environmental sustainability, and economic viability. In rural estates, Grosvenor handled a plethora of agricultural, residential, and commercial properties spread across rural Cheshire and parts of Chester city centre. Thus, the modern Grosvenor Empire was a masterclass in not only wealth preservation, but expansion and social acuity, as they shrewdly modulated from minor nobility to some of the monarchy's closest confidants and business partners. However, the lustrous history of the Grosvenor lineage, like many old money families, is not devoid of shadows. Behind the opulence and majesty, elements of controversy often lurk, tainting the family's well-polished image. In the late 2000s, a scandal of a distinctly dissolute nature embroiled Gerald Cavendish Grosvenor, the 6th Duke of Westminster. Come 2008, media outlets were abuzz with stories associating him with the notorious Emperor's Club VIP, a high-end call-girl ring at the heart of New York Governor Eliot Spitzer's downfall. Reports insinuated that despite the vast Grosvenor fortune, the Duke was uncharacteristically tight-fisted, choosing to bargain with an Emperor's Club girl over their liaison's cost. This unexpected revelation somewhat marred the family's prestige, sparking a wave of gossip among the British elite. But this unsavory encounter with the Emperor's Club was not the only time the Grosvenor family's name was tarnished. A few years later, The infamous Paradise Papers implicated the family in another scandal. The leaked documents, which unveiled an extensive network of offshore tax havens used by the world's wealthy and influential figures, indicated that the Grosvenors had channeled dividends worth millions into concealed offshore companies. This startling disclosure traced back to 1999 and suggested that these offshore entities controlled approximately half of the shares in a subsidiary company managing the Grosvenors' North American and Australian ventures. The intricate offshore arrangement aimed to reduce tax liabilities, igniting public furor and raising serious ethical questions about the family's financial dealings. Moreover, in 2019, Hugh Grosvenor, the Duke of Westminster, faced severe backlash and accusations of so-called social cleansing. This controversy emerged when his property group, Grosvenor, planned to raze Walden House in Belgravia, London, to make way for a plush new development. This proposition threatened to displace 40 families from their council homes, with some residents having inhabited them for up to 40 years. The plans sparked public indignation, resulting in a petition opposing the eviction gathering over 180,000 signatures. In response to the public outcry, Westminster City Council announced that all tenants would receive new social housing on the site, effectively averting the eviction. Grosvenor refuted the social cleansing allegations, asserting that such language contradicted their business ethos. Despite this, the controversy underscored the escalating concerns around the impact of luxury property developments on London's working-class communities. Now, navigating the 21st century, the Grosvenor family maintains a commanding and influential presence, their wealth predominantly rooted in their enormous land and property assets. Within London, the family's ownership comprises half of Mayfair, encompassing freeholds of the American Embassy, the Beaumont Hotel, and the Gagosian Gallery, along with 300 acres of Belgravia. Several other properties within the area include the Biscuit Factory in Bermondsey, St Mark's in Mayfair, and Eaton Square in Belgravia. Their holdings also extend to the Eaton Estate in Cheshire, the Abbey Stead Estate in Lancashire, and additional estates in Scotland and Spain. Indeed, the family's property enterprise, the Grosvenor Group, remains a driving force in urban property development and investment across many of the world's premier cities. They showcase considerable expertise in handling listed buildings and developing new properties, often investing in community-oriented features like sports facilities and shopping centres. Internationally, their holdings comprise notable assets in various locations. In Canada, they possess Annacis Island, a vast 485-hectare property nestled in Vancouver's Fraser River. In the United States, Grosvenor Americas focuses on property development and investment, with diverse projects spread across the nation. Over in Hong Kong, the Grosvenor Group has invested in luxury homes development through a Bermuda entity, Grosvenor Land Property Fund Limited. Additionally, the Grosvenor Group boasts investments across various European countries, including France, Spain, and Portugal. Now, the current family figurehead is Hugh Grosvenor, the 7th Duke of Westminster, with a net worth nearing a staggering $12.5 billion. Known for his youthful charm, Hugh Grosvenor has been described as having been born with the longest silver spoon anyone can have. Despite his colossal wealth and privilege, in true old money fashion, he favours a low-key lifestyle, avoiding public scrutiny. His close friendship with Prince William extends to him being the godfather to Prince George, a symbol of the close ties between the Grosvenor and royal families. Furthermore, this connection extends further, as the Grosvenors have long been closely allied with the royal family, with the 7th Duke of Westminster being one of King Charles's 33 godchildren. Regarding the fairer sex, one of the Grosvenor family's most influential women today is Lady Edwina Grosvenor, the sister of the 7th Duke of Westminster. Born into exceptional wealth and privilege, she has chosen a path of philanthropy and prison reform. As the founder and chair of One Small Thing, an organisation that collaborates with prisoners and staff in male and female prisons, and a founding investor and ambassador of the Clink restaurant chain, which prepares prisoners for the catering industry, Lady Edwina's efforts in prison reform and dedication to philanthropy have been said to underline her commitment to harnessing her influence and resources for societal betterment. Thus, through centuries of strategic decisions, visionary leadership, and the convergence of destiny, the Grosvenors have transformed from stalwart knights of the British realm since the days of William the Conqueror to the modern, old money British family that owns the richest parts of London. In the stately world of British aristocracy, where old money families often focus on acquiring more and more lands and piling up their millions, a different pursuit captivates a few, a game of power and politics. Cue the Cavendish family, the undisputed champions of Britain's political chessboard. They've mastered the art of power with the finesse of a grand master, and this £900 million lineage has wielded their political prowess with such deft subtlety that they've not only had family members serve as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, the Cavendish have kin who've boldly turned down the role 3 times, bringing the phrase "playing hard to get" to a whole new aristocratic level. Furthermore, over their nearly millennium-long history, the Dukes and Duchesses of Devonshire, the noble title donned by the Cavendish family, have been the backbone behind 2 of England's most iconic female leaders. And yet, with great power comes great tragedy, as it were. This family has even been entangled in one of the UK's most eerie and enduring true crime mysteries, a possible serial killer plot straight out of a Victorian thriller. In today's episode, we share a family story that isn't just about wealth and titles. It's a complex web of ambition, power and intrigue that has shaped British history as we describe the Cavendish, the most powerful, old money British political family. In the swirling social whirlpool of British high society, Peregrine Cavendish, also known as the 12th Duke of Devonshire, is not just any blue-blooded aristocrat. His family tree is more like a who's who of history. Think of family members marrying Kennedys, and Princess Diana as a distant cousin, and you'd just be scratching the gold-plated surface. And then, of course, let's not forget the cash. As of last year, the Cavendish family's bank balance is a dizzying £900 million. Consider it a handsome ransom for meticulously maintaining sprawling estates and an art stash that would make a museum blush. But the Cavendish clan's luxurious liquidity is just the tip of the iceberg. Their real treasury trove lies in their property portfolio, with Chatsworth House in Derbyshire being the glittering crown jewel. This Grade 1 listed architectural wonder isn't just a house, it's a dynasty's home for nearly 5 centuries, thanks to Sir William Cavendish and Bess of Hardwicke's real estate savvy back in 1555. With an estate that covers a house, stables, a garden that's more like a small country, 105 acres to be precise, and a 1,800-acre park nearly the size of a small city. It's an adventure playground that would make any adult wish they were a kid again. But wait, there's more. The Cavendish property empire extends to historic sites like Bolton Abbey and Lismore Castle. Bolton Abbey in Yorkshire is a baronial dream, serving as the Duke and Duchess's private Yorkshire pad. And over in Ireland, Lismore Castle adds a dash of fairy tale magic as a castle for rent, because who doesn't want to live out their Cinderella fantasies? Now, let's talk art. The Cavendish collection at Chatsworth House is a visual feast spanning 500 years. And it's got everything from Leonardo da Vinci's sketches to Gainsborough's and Lucian Freud's portraits, capturing any and all epochs from regal elegance to modern vibes. And then there's Raffaele Monti's sculpture of a veiled Vestal Virgin, alongside costumes and family jewels that would make even the most seasoned art critic's jaw drop. But it's not all keep-out signs and velvet ropes. This treasure trove doubles as a goldmine for scholars and artists, showcasing the Cavendish family's dedication to art appreciation. They're not hoarding these masterpieces. Parts of the collection are on display at Chatsworth House, allowing the public to feast their eyes on these gems. But the Duke, hitched to Amanda Carmen Haywood Lonsdale since 1967, isn't just about fancy houses and art. He's a bigwig in the horse racing world too. Think high-profile roles like Her Majesty's representative at Ascot and chairman of Ascot Racecourse Limited. And his time at the Jockey Club and as its senior steward saw some major shake-ups in the racing industry, including the birth of the British Horse Racing Board. Politically, the Duke's roles like Chancellor of the University of Derby and Her Majesty's representative at Ascot aren't just fancy titles. They hint at his sway in public life. But here's the kicker. Despite his lofty position, his views on the aristocracy's place in today's world are surprisingly progressive. In 2010, he was ready to ditch his title if hereditary peers got the boot from the House of Lords. He's basically saying, hanging on to those titles in these times is more puzzling than a Rubik's Cube, and I'm fine with letting it go. However, at this point you're probably wondering, how did this $900 million political behemoth get their start? If they're one of the few aristocratic families willing to give up their titles and start anew. In order to get our answer, we'll have to step back more than 500 years to a place unsurprisingly called Cavendish, England. The captivating saga of the Cavendish family began in the 14th century with one Sir John Cavendish of, believe it or not, Cavendish, Suffolk, England. This family, bearing the name Cavendish, draws its origins all the way back to the Norman era, specifically to the benevolent Robert de Guernon, a notable figure in King Henry I's court, remembered for his generous contributions to the Abbey of Gloucester. Over time, the family name evolved, known as the Norman French Gernon, until the 1500s, when it gracefully transitioned to Cavendish. And this transition from a Norman French name to an Anglo-Norman identity is emblematic of the profound influence of Norman ancestry within the English aristocracy. For instance, other old money British families that we've covered on this channel, like the Grosvenors and the Percys, both boast Norman roots and exemplify this prestigious connection as well. Indeed, Norman lineage, often seen as a hallmark of noble blood, is intricately woven into the fabric of the English aristocratic identity, with these families carrying not just a name, but a legacy of the Norman conquest and its enduring impact on the social and political landscape of England. Now, the mid-16th century heralded a remarkable rise in the Cavendish family's fortunes, mainly a result of strategic marriages and astute financial decisions. For example, the family's dramatic ascent was catapulted by the union of Bess of Hardwicke and Sir William Cavendish, the esteemed treasurer of the King's Chamber. First, utilizing deft social maneuvering in 1549, this power couple acquired the majestic Chatsworth estate, a symbol of their burgeoning wealth and soaring ambitions. Certainly, Bess, known for her sharp business acumen, further expanded the family's empire through pioneering ventures in mining and glassmaking. Her extraordinary vision in meticulously documenting the household furnishings of her properties at Chatsworth, Hardwicke, and Chelsea in 1601 ensured the preservation of a priceless collection of historical textiles, offering a rare glimpse into the lavish lifestyle and rich heritage of the Cavendish family. This collection, now known as the Hardwicke Hall Textiles, stands as the largest private collection of textiles by a single family. And Bess's architectural contributions remain significant as well in British history. Thus, it is truly remarkable that the Cavendish family was home to one of England's most influential women as early as the late 16th century, and one whose power and foresight continue to resonate in the present day. Bess's legacy, a blend of cultural patronage and architectural innovation, not only highlights her individual prowess, but also underscores the enduring influence of the unsung heroines of history. Now, the union of Bess and Sir William produced 8 children, including William Cavendish, from whom the Dukes of Devonshire descend, and the couple's shared vision and ambition laid a solid foundation for their family's subsequent prominence. Then in 1617, the Cavendish family status was significantly enhanced when William Cavendish was appointed the Earl of Devonshire. This title was more than ceremonial. It greatly elevated the family's societal position and influence, and young William Cavendish had a notable political and business career. Following his mother's passing in 1608, he inherited substantial wealth and property, which he judiciously managed, augmenting his estates and investing in overseas enterprises like the Virginia and Bermuda companies. Indeed, the Cavendish family's involvement in the Virginia and Bermuda companies in the early 17th century highlights a complex chapter of history, blending significant economic success with the darker aspects of colonial enterprise. You see, after inheriting substantial wealth and property in 1608, William Cavendish invested in the Virginia Company, a venture chartered by King James I aimed at establishing colonial settlements in North America. The company, comprising the London and Plymouth companies, famously established America's Jamestown in 1607, the first permanent English settlement in North America. Thus, it can definitively be said that through their investments, the Cavendish family had a direct hand in helping to found what would become the United States of America. However, the Virginia Company's business model first relied heavily on indentured servants for labor, before soon thereafter granting its officers land with attached labor, including slaves, as part of its strategy to fund the colonial government. Additionally, the Cavendish family invested in the Bermuda Company, a subsidiary of the Virginia Company, managing the colony of Bermuda. Bermuda became significant for its tobacco cultivation and salt production, again offering high returns to investors like the Cavendish family. However, like the Virginia Company, Bermuda's early history was marred by the use of indentured servants and the introduction of African slaves, reflecting the harsh realities of colonial expansion. Therefore, while the Cavendish family's investments in these companies were financially astute, contributing to their wealth and status, they were also entwined with the darker aspects of colonialism and slavery, a reflection of the complex and often troubling history of European expansion into the New World. William Cavendish's political stature was also distinguished by his various roles, including Member of Parliament, High Sheriff of Derbyshire, and Justice of the Peace. His ascent to Baron Cavendish of Hardwicke in 1605 and Earl of Devonshire in 1618 was a clear indication of royal favour, enhancing his authority and standing. But it was Cavendish's association with Thomas Hobbes, the esteemed philosopher, that significantly contributed to his power. Hobbes, who began as Cavendish's secretary in 1608 and later became the Earl of Devonshire's tutor, brought intellectual prestige and access to influential circles for the family. Hobbes's political philosophy, particularly in his seminal work Leviathan, posited government as a mechanism for collective security justified by a social contract. And this perspective likely influenced Cavendish's political strategies and governance approach. Additionally, Hobbes' materialist views and scientific explanations of phenomena as matter in motion could have shaped Cavendish's wealth management and estate expansion strategies. Thus, the Cavendish family's rise to prominence presented a yin-yang style historical narrative. On the one hand, they are admirable masters of business and political power, being home to both one of England's most successful and influential women as far back as the 16th century, as well as the family's involvement in creating the future United States of America. On the other hand, their wealth undoubtedly came in part from their involvement in the rapacious expansion of the mid-Atlantic slave trade. In the next chapter, we'll discover how the then wealthy family expanded their influence even further, going from just another rich bunch of aristocrats to the very top of parliamentary power. In the late 17th century, the Cavendish family's status soared when William Cavendish, the 4th Earl of Devonshire, was made the first Duke of Devonshire in 1694 by King William III and Queen Mary II. And this elevation, a reward for his support during the Glorious Revolution, reflected the family's loyalty to the new monarchs and their ascending position within the English aristocracy. The Cavendish family's rise to the dukedom was thus not just due to their political savvy, but also strategic marriages and wealth accumulation through agriculture, manufacturing, and finance. And they would use their dukedom to wield unfathomable power in the following centuries. For example, William Cavendish, the 4th Duke of Devonshire, carved out a distinct place for himself in British history. Born to the 3rd Duke of Devonshire and Catherine Hoskins in May 1720, Cavendish was destined for a life marked by privilege and power. And in 1741, he stepped into the political arena as the MP for Derbyshire, an achievement more a reflection of his family's clout and his unwavering allegiance to the Whig Party than of any personal political triumphs. In 1755, a pivotal moment in the Cavendish family's political narrative unfolded when he was appointed as the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland, a role he held until 1757. During this period, the 4th Duke confronted the daunting task of fostering unity in Ireland's politically volatile environment. You see, the Irish political scene was sharply divided between those supporting the London administration and a patriot group advocating for Irish independence. Cavendish, who himself was a holder of land in Ireland, adeptly navigated this intricate political terrain, utilising his connections through marriage and friendships to engage with both factions. However, it was his brief but impactful tenure as Prime Minister of Great Britain from November 1756 to May 1757, amid the 7 Years' War, that truly marked the zenith of his political journey. Cavendish was propelled into the role of Prime Minister following William Pitt's refusal to join the ministry of the Duke of Newcastle and the reluctance of the great Whig families to endorse Pitt as Prime Minister. Despite being more of a political mediator than a traditional leader, Cavendish leveraged his personal charisma and the prestige of his family to broker peace between the warring factions. And as Prime Minister, he was regarded as a unifying figure, echoing his conciliatory approach in Ireland, and aimed to bridge deep political divides during a time of intense crisis. However, his tenure at the helm was brief, and the following year, when Pitt reconciled with Newcastle, Cavendish stepped down, subsequently assuming the role of Lord Chamberlain of the household, which he held until 1762. But his political career, characterized by his role as a peacemaker and a unifier in tumultuous times, remains a significant chapter in the storied history of the Cavendish family. However, echoing the monumental influence of Bess of Hardwicke, the Cavendish's family tree would soon intertwine with another legendary woman in British history, Georgiana Cavendish, Duchess of Devonshire. Born Georgiana Spencer, her entry into the Cavendish lineage as the wife of William Cavendish, the 5th Duke of Devonshire, and mother of the 6th Duke, added a layer of intrigue to this aristocratic family. Renowned for her charm and beauty, Georgiana was a formidable presence in both the social and political realms. And her support of key Whig politicians, like Charles James Fox, was a groundbreaking act for women of her time. Yet, behind the allure and political prowess, Georgiana's life was rife with personal struggles. Her gambling addiction led to astronomical debts, a secret only revealed after her untimely demise at 48. Furthermore, the unconventional nature of her marriage, marked by mutual infidelities and her affair with Charles Grey, was the subject of much public scrutiny. Despite these tribulations, she remained a devoted mother, challenging aristocratic norms by nursing her children herself. Additionally, Georgiana's legacy extends beyond her immediate life story. She's remembered as a fashion icon, a political influencer, and a woman who defied the constraints of her time. Furthermore, her life draws striking parallels with that of Diana, Princess of Wales, Georgiana's great-great-great-great-niece. Both women, separated by centuries, shared experiences of public fascination, personal struggles, and the weight of aristocratic life. However, it was with the rise of her son, the 6th Duke of Devonshire, that the Cavendish family would begin to make a strong turn in its legacy towards the sweeping progressive reforms that were coming to the West. The 6th Duke of Devonshire, another William Cavendish, born in 1790, stepped into a world vastly different from that of his ancestors. Inheriting the dukedom in 1811, along with a vast expanse of land and numerous stately homes, his entry into the political scene was set against a backdrop of burgeoning social change, and his political identity was deeply rooted in the reformist ideals of the Whig Party. Cavendish championed causes such as Catholic emancipation, the abolition of slavery, and the advocacy for shorter factory labour hours, and his commitment to these causes underscored a progressive mindset rare among his peers of the aristocracy. Now, despite the hurdle of deafness, which could have significantly hindered his political influence, Cavendish did not shy away from positions of considerable responsibility. He served as the Lord Chamberlain of the household twice, a role that placed him at the heart of the royal household's operations. But the Duke's interests extended beyond the confines of political chambers. His presidency of the Royal Horticultural Society in 1838 and his contributions to agriculture were significant, most notably in the development of the Cavendish banana, a variety that has become a staple in global diets. However, despite his public accomplishments, Cavendish's personal life bore the marks of unfulfilled romantic aspirations. Known as the Bachelor Duke, his unrequited love for Lady Caroline Ponsonby, who chose William Lamb, the future Prime Minister Lord Melbourne, over him, added a poignant chapter to his story. Moving forward to 1858, the Cavendish family's influence in British politics continued with William Cavendish, the 7th Duke of Devonshire. A key figure in the Reform Act of 1858, his support for this crucial piece of legislation was a defining moment. The Duke's backing of the Reform Bill led to his controversial ejection from Cambridge University. However, the robust network and influence of the Cavendish family ensured that he quickly secured another seat in the Fitzwilliam borough of Malton, and later in the family's stronghold in Derbyshire. But the Cavendish family's role in the Reform Act of 1858 was a vivid demonstration of their enduring ability to navigate the complex and often turbulent waters of British politics. However, it would be the tenure of Spencer Compton Cavendish, the 8th Duke of Devonshire, and a man who refused to become Prime Minister 3 times, where the family's true political sleight of hand for politics would be strongest on display. Spencer Compton Cavendish, the 8th Duke of Devonshire, was not merely another character in British politics. He was a central figure who masterfully navigated the complex world of power and influence. Born on the 23rd of July 1833 in Lower Holker, Lancashire, England, young Spencer's early life was shadowed by his mother's untimely death, leaving him to be raised primarily by his father. But Cavendish's political journey commenced in 1857 when he secured a seat in Parliament for North Lancashire as a Liberal, mentored by Lord Palmerston. And following the death of his cousin, the 6th Duke, in 1858, his father ascended to the dukedom, and Cavendish became the Marquess of Hartington. His political prowess was increasingly evident by 1875, as he led the Liberal opposition, and his role as Secretary of State for India from 1880 to 1882 under Prime Minister William Gladstone was notable yet fraught with controversy, particularly over Irish Home Rule. But this issue marked a turning point in his career, leading him to decline a position in Gladstone's 1886 government. He instead chose to lead the Liberal Unionists, opposing Home Rule. Inheriting the dukedom in 1891, Cavendish, now the Duke of Devonshire, took his place in the House of Lords, and his tenure as Lord President of the Council and leader of the House of Lords from 1895 to 1903 showcased his political acumen. Indeed, historian Roy Jenkins noted his thrice refusal of the prime ministerial position, reflecting his political philosophy and temperament more than a lack of ambition. And his legacy stands out for his political navigation and principled decisions, as he led 3 different political parties, demonstrating his substantial influence in British politics. Victor Christian William Cavendish, the 9th Duke of Devonshire, also left a significant mark. Born in May 1868 in London, he quickly followed in his family's political footsteps, and after his father's death in 1891, he became the youngest Member of Parliament, later holding roles as Treasurer of the Royal Household and Financial Secretary to the Treasury. His political journey led him to the House of Lords in 1908, but Victor Cavendish's appointment as Governor-General of Canada in 1916 is perhaps his most notable chapter. Despite initial skepticism, his tenure was ultimately celebrated, effectively managing the challenges of World War I and Prime Minister Borden's leadership. His contributions, along with Lady Evelyn Petty Fitzmaurice, significantly impacted Ottawa's cultural scene, and in Canada, Cavendish is remembered for his engagement with contemporary issues and guidance through the Great War. His passing on in May 1938 marked the end of a significant era in British and Canadian history. However, it was his son, the 10th Duke, who would be involved in one of the most enigmatic mysteries in the history of the British nobility. Edward William Spencer Cavendish, the 10th Duke of Devonshire, was ushered into the world in May 1895 in London. His educational journey led him through the esteemed halls of Eton College and later Trinity College, Cambridge, where he was bestowed a Doctor of Law degree in 1938. Then, his foray into the political arena was marked by his tenure as a Member of Parliament for West Derbyshire from 1923 to 1938, after having married Lady Mary Alice Gascoigne Cecil, daughter of the 4th Marquess of Salisbury, in 1917. Indeed, this union was not only a blend of noble lineages, but also the starting point of a new generation, with the birth of 5 children. Now, in an intriguing twist of fate, it is through their eldest, William John Robert Cavendish, that the Cavendish and Kennedy families found their destinies intertwined. Kathleen Agnes Kennedy, known affectionately as Kick and sister to the future American President John F. Kennedy, was betrothed to that same William John Robert. This marriage was a union of 2 powerful families, yet it was marred by grief when William, destined to inherit the Dukedom of Devonshire, passed during World War II, paving the way for his brother, Andrew Cavendish, to ascend as the 11th Duke of Devonshire. However, the intricate bond between the Kennedys and the Cavendishes was not confined to this shared sorrow. It extended to personal connections. such as the close relationship between John F. Kennedy and Deborah, Andrew Cavendish's wife and Duchess of Devonshire. This bond was highlighted by the presence of the Devonshires at Kennedy's presidential inauguration and further cemented during the Cuban Missile Crisis, with Deborah gracing the White House as a guest. With that said, back to our murder mystery. You see, in the realm of Freemasonry, Edward's influence was significant. He served as the Grand Master of the United Grand Lodge of England from 1947 to 1950, speaking to his stature in this secretive society, and his prominence was also reflected in his land holdings, with the famed Chatsworth House and expansive estates across the UK and Ireland under his stewardship. However, Edward's life took a mysterious turn with his sudden demise on the 26th of November 1950 in Eastbourne at the age of 55. The initial explanation of a heart attack was clouded in controversy due to the involvement of Dr. John Bodkin Adams, a general practitioner who later gained notoriety as a suspected serial killer. Adams, who certified Edward's death as natural, was later embroiled in accusations of multiple patient deaths under suspicious circumstances. Furthermore, historian Pamela Cullen has speculated on Adams' motives, citing his affiliation with the Plymouth Brethren and their aversion to Freemasonry, possibly linking this to Edward's high-ranking status in the Freemason community. Yet, these theories remain in the realm of conjecture, leaving the true circumstances of Edward's death shrouded in mystery. And the absence of a coroner's inquest in Edward's case, a deviation from normative procedures for unexplained deaths, has only deepened the enigma. Comparisons to Dr. Harold Shipman, another British doctor convicted of multiple murders, have been drawn, though Adams himself was acquitted in a 1957 murder trial. And this chapter in the Duke's storied lineage and the annals of British medical history remains a perplexing and unresolved narrative. But the Cavendish family, even now, continues to evolve with its newer generations, as exemplified by William Cavendish, known professionally as Bill Burlington, the Earl of Burlington. Born in June 1969, he is the son of Peregrine Cavendish, the current Duke of Devonshire. William's education at Eton College and the University of Cambridge, followed by studies in photography under Jorge Lewinsky, marks a blend of traditional aristocratic upbringing and modern academic pursuits. Therefore, Lord Burlington, in addition to his noble lineage, has carved a niche for himself as a professional photographer. His role as the Chancellor of the University of Derby since March 2018 further highlights his engagement with contemporary society and his contribution to the academic community. Now, in 2007, Lord Burlington married Laura Roundell, whose background as a former model, fashion editor and stylist adds another dimension to the diverse pursuits of the family. The couple's family life, with their 3 children, Lady Maud Cavendish, James Cavendish and Lady Eleanor Cavendish, brings a personal element to their public personas. Notably, James, born on the 12th of December 2010, follows his father as the second in line for the Dukedom of Devonshire. Thus, the Cavendish family's future, represented by Lord Burlington and his son James, is a fusion of enduring heritage and fresh perspectives. As they uphold the family's legacy, they also have the unique opportunity to reshape it, infusing it with their individual interests, passions, and responses to a rapidly changing world. When discussing the enduring emblems of aristocratic power and legendary old money families in the United Kingdom, the conversation typically gravitates towards the glittering skyline of London, the sprawling country estates in the south of England, or the industrial might of cities like Manchester and Liverpool. Yet, up north, in the rugged terrain of Northumberland, there lies an often overlooked, yet historically vital, old money British family that has not only ruled for almost 1,000 years, but still stands to this very day as one of the United Kingdom's largest private landowners, owning a domain of over 100,000 acres. For nearly a millennium, the Percy family, Dukes of Northumberland, have wielded their influence from this strategically crucial region, straddling the historically volatile border with Scotland. Indeed, much of the area these old money aristocrats add to their ledger of assets has been of such monumental importance that it was even acknowledged by the ancient Romans themselves. It was in the Percy family's ancestral lands that the Roman Empire constructed the iconic Hadrian's Wall, to serve not just as a formidable barrier against northern incursions, but also as a symbol of the Roman Empire's reach. Furthermore, as if ties to ancient Rome and nearly 1,000 years in power wasn't enough, the Percy family legacy is so profound that it has even been immortalized by none other than the bard himself, William Shakespeare. In today's episode, we'll share the full saga of how and why the 1,000-year-old money family, known as the Dukes of Northumberland, have managed to stay in power for so long as we describe. The Percys, the old money family that owns the north of England. In order to get a wide-angle view of the millennium-long influence of the Percy family, we must first take a journey to the north, where the Percy family reigns supreme. This is Northumberland, that mysterious land steeped in historical significance for centuries, where Roman legions once marched and where the Percy family's rule is not just impressive. It is the manor of legends. Overseeing a colossal 100,000 acres of land, these aristocratic titans are more than mere landowners. They're the emperors of the northern English green, reigning over acreage that has seen the ebb and flow of history like few other old money families in the history of the British Isles. And at the heart of this dynasty, steering this majestic ship through the modern era, is none other than Ralph George Algernon Percy, the 12th Duke of Northumberland. Born into a world of privilege on the 16th of November 1956, Duke Ralph, a product of the ultimate prestigious British old money education at Eton College and Oxford, wasn't just only the keys to the kingdom, he earned them with his savvy in modern history and land management. Then, before he took the reins, Duke Ralph honed his leadership chops at Arundel Castle's estate office and managing the family's flagship, Alnwick Castle, for his brother. Indeed, Alnwick, far more than a collection of ancient stones, stands as a towering architectural icon, flexing its aesthetic and historical muscles since the year 1096. And, true to form, this fortress, born from the vision of Ivo de Vesci, has seen a transformation worthy of a medieval epic. From a stalwart defence against Scottish incursions to a majestic circular keep, the Percy family estate Alnwick breaks away from the cookie-cutter mould of Norman square fortresses. But Alnwick Castle isn't just basking in its ancestral glory, it's currently still a live wire of activity. Open to the public, it is England's second-largest lived-in castle, boasting attractions that pull in crowds like a medieval rock concert. And let's not forget its extended stint in the Harry Potter films, where it magically morphed into a wizarding school, making it a pilgrimage site for Potterheads. But the Percy family influence stretches well beyond Alnwick, marking territories like Sion House and lands spanning from Scotland to Tyneside. With a cool £490 million in the bank, managed by Northumberland Estates, the Dukes of Northumberland are more than just land barons. They're influencers in the realms of art, hospitality, and even eco-friendly housing. At the forefront of this dynastic evolution along with Duke Ralph is his partner in life, wife Jane Richard Northumberland. The pair tied the knot in a ceremony that blended tradition and romance on the 21st of July 1979 at Traquair Parish Church. And together they've nurtured a family that's as diverse in their interests as they are united in their heritage. The eldest, Lady Catherine Sarah Katie Percy, born on the 23rd of June 1982, melds the art of gunsmithing with the intricacies of mechanics. Yes, indeed, if you thought that aristocratic millennials were only meant to be socialites and Instagram influencers, think again. Lady Kate is quite literally a gunsmith and mechanic. Next, George Dominic Percy, or Earl Percy, born in May 1984, is not just the heir apparent, but also a visionary in the energy sector as the managing director of Hotspur Geothermal, a British company that specialises in natural resource development and renewable energies. Additionally, Lady Melissa Jane Percy, born in 1987, weaves her magic in the world of fashion, a bit more common in aristocratic circles, yet all the while also boasting a past life as a professional tennis player. And last but not least, Lord Max Percy, born on the 26th of May 1990, crunches numbers and strategies as a financial analyst. Thus, with a multi-talented family dipping their toes in many unexpected disciplines, at least for a brood of aristocrats with 1,000 years of power under their belts, we are faced with our next question. How exactly did the Percys, these legendary dukes and duchesses of Northumberland in the north of England, get their start? And how have they managed to maintain power for more than 9 centuries in the region of the world that birthed the Industrial Revolution? In order to answer that, we must, as is the case with many old money families on Albion, circle back to the fateful year of 1066 and the Norman conquest of England by William the Conqueror. Now, during the Norman conquest, from 1066 to the year 1300, the Percy family's entry into English history was anything but subtle. From their origins in Percy-en-Auge, Normandy, hence the surname Percy, they embarked on a journey that was less of a channel crossing and more of a seismic shift in medieval England's power dynamics. Indeed, William de Percy, the clan's original trailblazer, landed in England with William the Conqueror himself in between the years 1066 and 1067. Come to think of it, it might be easiest to imagine this Percy ancestor as the medieval equivalent of a high-rolling startup co-founder who, thanks to the king's generosity, found himself the new owner of prime real estate across Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, Essex and Hampshire. Now, even the iconic Domesday Book of 1086, a middle-aged ledger that detailed the exact locations and power centres of medieval England, chronicled the Percy family's land acquisitions, catapulting the future Dukes of Northumberland from mere landowners to social royalty. As the calendar flipped to the 14th century, the Percys, already by then firmly entrenched as English nobility, dabbled in a mix of military ventures and political machinations. For instance, the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314, where Sir Henry Percy, the first Baron Percy, made a cameo, but not in the expected manner. Evading the battlefield under Edward II, he opted for a strategic retreat at Alnwick. Some called it a tactical masterstroke, others a lesson in picking battles wisely. And this period also marked the Percys' alliance with the Plantagenets, the then rock stars of royal lineage. Without a doubt, aligning with them wasn't just a savvy political move, it was similar to scoring a VIP ticket to the medieval elite's most exclusive social events. Consequently, the alliance between the Percy family and the Plantagenets alliance bore fruit in 1377 with the creation of the Earldom of Northumberland. So when Henry Percy bagged this title post Richard II's coronation, it was less of a step up and more of a quantum leap into the aristocratic stratosphere. Furthermore, the Percys' knack for navigating the tumultuous seas of English politics in the Middle Ages was legendary. Their acumen in military and political arenas was matched only by their shrewd land management and strategic marriages, weaving a web of influence that extended across the British Isles. Indeed, their involvement in key historical events, from the signing of the Magna Carta to the Wars of the Roses, further cemented their status. They didn't just play the Game of Thrones, they rewrote the rules. Therefore, to put this into perspective, to this very day, one of the largest landowners in the United Kingdom has held power for such a long time that their ancestors quite literally signed the Magna Carta. Undoubtedly, that's the kind of familial continuity you can't just cultivate by buying your new kiddie a Rolls-Royce and putting them in a trendy prep school. However, to be clear, being able to maintain power for this long doesn't come without making a few enemies. And indeed, soon after the Earldom of Northumberland was created, the Percys would be involved in one of the most turbulent feuds between families in English history. In the middle of the Wars of the Roses, a period that shook England from 1455 to 1487, the Percy family wasn't merely a group of spectators. They were central characters in this iconic historical drama. This era, marked by the fierce rivalry of the Plantagenet houses of York and Lancaster, reshaped the very fabric of the nation. And the devastating toll of the conflict, claiming over 105,000 lives and ending the Plantagenet male line, set the stage for the rise of the Tudor dynasty. Amid this national turmoil, the Percy-Neville feud emerged as a pivotal subplot, igniting tensions that would fuel the larger war. Starting in the 1450s, this bitter rivalry between two northern powerhouses, the Percys and the Nevilles, laid the groundwork for the ensuing chaos. You see, the Nevilles, during this time, were a family on the ascent. They had steadily gained power, largely through strategic marriages, like the union of Richard Neville with Alice Montacute, heiress of the Earl of Salisbury. This savvy move not only expanded their wealth and lands, but also cemented their status among the northern aristocracy. Additionally, Their shrewd political alliances, including ties with influential figures at court, further augmented their influence. Thus, it was this rising power and expanding influence of the Nevilles that set them on a collision course with the established and equally ambitious Percy family, transforming a regional power struggle into a key factor in the larger Wars of the Roses. Now, the city of York, a northern jewel, became the stage for their confrontations, witnessing clashes near its walls in 1453 and 1454 that only fanned the flames of discord. But the feud took a truly dramatic turn on the 24th of August 1453 with Thomas Neville's marriage to Maud, a union that the Percys found offensive. This tension boiled over into a confrontation aimed at decimating the Neville party, a move that pushed the Nevilles into the arms of the Duke of York and the Percys towards the Lancastrian Somerset. Therefore, this Percy-Neville feud was far more than a local squabble. It was a catalyst in the broader national conflict that reshaped England's destiny, and the resolution only came with Henry VII's restoration of the Percys in 1485, a move that not only ended the feud, but also marked a significant moment in the turbulent narrative of the Wars of the Roses. Even further, the Percy family's legendarily fiery spirit during this epoch was so well known that they even made it into the works of Shakespeare himself, with not one, but two Percy family members being characters in the Bard's Henry IV play. And then, back to real life. Next, there's the so-called Rising of the North in 1569, orchestrated by Thomas Percy, the 7th Earl of Northumberland. This wasn't merely a rebellion, it was a high-stakes gambit to replace Elizabeth I with Mary Queen of Scots. Thomas Percy, stepping up as the face of the rebellion, embodied the clash between religious fervour and political ambition. But as bold as it was, the rebellion stumbled, lacking the necessary support and facing a formidable response from Elizabeth I's forces. The Percys faced the music, with Thomas Percy's capture and execution marking a significant, albeit morbid, chapter in the family saga. However, after this tense time for this storied family, the Percys would not only begin to righten themselves, but actually improve their fates by deftly joining both the coming Industrial Revolution and even having a key hand in the realm of British literature. Let's join the family on the next chapter in their story, as they simultaneously deliver key moments to modern British industry, as well as one of the nation's beloved poets. In the 19th century, the Percy family, esteemed as the Dukes of Northumberland, embraced the winds of change brought by the Industrial Revolution. They astutely capitalized on this era of innovation, turning their vast lands into hives of industrial activity. For example, in the early 1800s, the Percy coal mine at Shilbottle was a symbol of their foresight, with Charles Percy's father deftly managing the estate for the Duke. Additionally, as the 1840s rolled in, the Percys, ever the visionaries, plunged into the burgeoning railway industry. Additionally, this period marked a pivotal chapter for the Percys, transcending their medieval, Tudor and Stuart era legacies. The late 19th century's technological advancements and socio-economic upheavals required a redefined approach to aristocracy, and the Percys rose to the challenge. For example, beyond their industrial enterprises, they emerged as cultural and educational vanguards. In the literary domain, Thomas Percy, a distinguished member of the family, ignited a literary renaissance with his seminal work, Relics of Ancient English Poetry. Published in 1765, this collection of English and Scottish ballads transcended its role as a mere anthology. It rekindled interest in traditional songs and ballads, profoundly influencing the so-called Romantic poets. Legendary British figures such as Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth were inspired to craft their ballads in emulation of those in Percy's collection. But the impact of Relics extended beyond the shores of Britain. It spurred the collection and study of ballads as a popular endeavour, resonating across Europe and inspiring movements like the Brothers Grimm in Germany. These movements laid the foundation for Romantic nationalism, a significant cultural and intellectual shift of the era. Thus, outside of their business and battle bona fides, the Dukes of Northumberland, the Percy family, even have a direct hand in the literary history of the English language, from Shakespeare himself down to names like Coleridge and Wordsworth. However, much like the rest of Europe, coming into the bloodiest century in world history, the 20th, we'd have to wonder how the Percys would pull out all the stops in order to continue to reign supreme. As World War I unfolded from 1914 to 1918, the Percy family wasn't content with being mere spectators. They were right at the heart of the action. Before the war's onset, the Duke of Northumberland made a pivotal move, transforming land near Alnwick Castle into a training camp for the Tyneside Brigades, who would join the ranks of the Northumberland Fusiliers. This wasn't just about providing space, it was about shaping the forces that would stand at the forefront of Britain's military efforts. The Northumberland Fusilier, a formidable unit in the British Army, expanded their ranks to an impressive 52 battalions, with 29 serving abroad. And indeed, they were a central force during the war, engaging in the grueling trench warfare of the Western Front, and even extended their valour to the Macedonian Front, the Gallipoli campaign, and the Italian Front. Their role was not only significant, but also symbolised the military might and resilience of Britain. Stepping up to the dukedom in 1918, right before the war ended, was Alan Ian Percy, the 8th Duke, born in 1880. Much is the style of a Percy. His life was a fascinating tapestry of roles. A British peer, army officer, a newspaper proprietor. His military career included a stint as a second lieutenant in the Second Boer War, while his political leanings saw him as a staunch Tory and a fervent supporter of the House of Lords. His influence extended to the realms of journalism and publishing, marking him as a multifaceted figure of his time. Then, as World War II raged, Alnwick Castle transitioned from a family home to a strategic military asset. The HMS Alnwick Castle, named in honour of this lineage, was a testament to the family's unwavering commitment to the nation's defence. Furthermore, the next head of the Percy household, the 9th Duke of Northumberland, Henry George Allen Percy, took the helm in 1930, only to have his life cut short on the shores of Dunkirk, serving the British people, leaving behind a legacy of valiant bravery and service to the nation. Fast forward to the late 20th century, and the Percys, ever the trendsetters, turned their focus to historical preservation. The 1970s to 90s saw them donning their restoration hats, transforming heritage sites, with Alnwick Castle taking the spotlight. Under the stewardship of Elizabeth Percy and Sir Hugh Smithson, the castle wasn't just restored, it was reborn, ready to take on the future while honouring its past. Specifically, the 80s brought a new chapter for the Percys as they swung open their estate doors to the public. Alnwick Castle's transition from private abode to public marvel wasn't just a change of policy. It was like turning a private diary into a bestseller. In this era, the Percys weren't just preserving history, they were making it, balancing their noble heritage with a knack for modern times. And so, here we stand today, with the Percy family, also known as the Dukes of Northumberland, almost 1,000 years in and still holding some of the most sway and acreage on Albion. Pretty much everyone and their mother is familiar with the legendary tale of King Henry VIII and his 6 wives, a frenzied search for a male heir that led to one of the most significant religious transformations in Western history, the founding of the Church of England. But what you probably don't know is that there is one aristocratic family, still holding sway at the very top of British nobility, that fielded not one, but 2 of Henry VIII's wives. Indeed, this old money dynasty has held power for so long that their noble title was created by none other than Richard III, that infamous king immortalised more than a century later in the work of William Shakespeare. With titles and estates that have weathered the tumults of English history, from the Wars of the Roses to the present day, the Howard family, Dukes of Norfolk, have not only survived the caprices of fortune, but have managed to remain at the forefront of the aristocracy. In today's episode, we'll give you the full goss on this dynasty, the #1 title in the hierarchy of British nobles who aren't royals themselves, as we describe, the Howard family, Dukes of Norfolk, the most prestigious British aristocrats. Edward Fitzalan Howard, the 18th Duke of Norfolk, could be forgiven for believing that blue blood runs slightly bluer in his veins than in those of his noble compatriots, because, as England's Premier Duke in 2024, he stands atop the upper crust of the British aristocracy, a position of such elevated prestige that even the Queen might find occasion to nod approvingly in his direction. But let's not be coy. Being the Duke of Norfolk isn't just a title. It's an entire existence of opulence, political clout, and ceremonious duties that would send lesser men scurrying for the shires. Thus, as the Premier Duke, he is perched at the pinnacle of the non-royal pyramid, making every other duke in the realm tilt their coronets in deference. And the title of Earl Marshal isn't merely an honorific passed down through family dinner stories, but a key to the executive washroom of state ceremonies. Organising anything from the state opening of Parliament to the coronation of monarchs falls under his remit. It's a job that involves less of the daily grind and more of the gilt-edged splendour, overseeing the College of Arms, the arbiters of heraldry across the kingdom, and presiding over the court of chivalry when one noble feels another has impugned his coat of arms in a particularly unsporting manner. And the Duke's pockets are deep, filled not just with loose change, but with assets sprawling from the luscious lands along the Thames to the regal reaches of Sussex. These plots and properties haven't just bolstered their bank balance over the centuries, but anchored their aristocratic relevance in a world where titles are less revered than TikTok followers. Now, his primary residence, Arundel Castle, is not so much a home as it is a monumental testimonial to historical endurance and architectural magnificence. It's a castle that doesn't just house a family, but encapsulates a lineage, complete with sprawling gardens and ancestral echoes in every hall that isn't a corridor. And the Duke's property portfolio extends further afield to Kenninghall Place, a shadow of its former self perhaps, but still a significant chunk of the family's sprawling estate. Furthermore, family life for the Duke is as woven into his aristocratic duties as the very threads of his bespoke tailoring. Married once to Georgina Susan Gore, the partnership produced 5 heirs to the Howard legacy before marital storms saw them part ways, only to retie the knot later with Francesca Herbert. It's a personal life that could rival any Shakespearean drama, which, as you'll see in a minute, is exactly what the Howard family is known for, as they've been ruling since even before the bard Billy Shakespeare was putting quill to paper. However, before we get the Elizabethan drama, let's give you the 30,000-foot view of exactly how the Howard family got so much clout, as the kids say, on our lovely island of Albion. Now, the Dukedom of Norfolk itself holds a venerable spot as the oldest existing dukedom in England's peerage system, its hierarchy of aristocrats, when the role was established way back in 1483 by King Richard III. But why exactly does the title Duke of Norfolk stand out above the many other fancy names in British nobility? Besides its age, it holds a top spot in the order of precedence. That's essentially a hierarchical list used at formal events, placing the Duke of Norfolk right up there as the Premier Duke, the highest rank below the royal family. And the title comes bundled with the role of the Earl Marshal, a fancy title that involves organising major ceremonial occasions like coronations and state openings of Parliament. Now, King Richard III, the man who granted John Howard the dukedom in 1483, is a figure shrouded in intrigue and drama. In 1483, he didn't just grab the crown, he wrapped himself in a permanent controversy by deposing his young nephew, Edward V, and his younger brother Richard, Duke of York. These boys, better known as the Princes in the Tower, vanished without a trace, presumed murdered, but the chilling suspicion is that their dear Uncle Richard ordered their deaths to clear his path to undisputed rule. Thus, this scandal is more than just a footnote in history. It's the linchpin of Richard III's legacy, turning his story into a mystery that has puzzled scholars, historians, and conspiracy theorists alike. William Shakespeare himself further spiced up Richard's image, portraying him as a scheming, malevolent character in his play Richard III. Through Shakespeare's lens, Richard is the ultimate villain, whose ambition is so vast it includes the cold-blooded murder of his own nephews. While modern historians debate the accuracy of this portrayal, suggesting it was likely exaggerated to favour the ruling Tudors, the tale has cemented Richard as a legendary figure in the annals of English royalty. Therefore, ever since our Shakespearean overland Richard III bestowed this title, our Howard family has wielded its power, bringing to life the pages of both history and literature. However, The intriguing aspects of the Howard family's past don't stop at the bard's fanciful creations. One of the more colourful claims of the Howard family is their supposed descent from Hereward the Wake, an Anglo-Saxon nobleman who became something of a folk hero, especially known for his resistance against Norman invaders. Thus, while many of the British aristocracy claim direct Norman lineage from William the Conqueror and his compatriots, the Dukes of Norfolk have opted to align their past with the proper English history of nearly 1,000 years of Anglo-Saxon heritage. Now, this rebel leader they claim is their ancestor, Hereward the Wake, made his mark around the year 1070 by staunchly opposing William the Conqueror during the Norman conquest of England. Specifically, Hereward's resistance is famously centred in the marshy fenlands of East Anglia, an area that provided a natural fortress against invasion. And while his story has been embellished over centuries, it has grown into a symbol of English defiance and endurance against foreign domination. But Hereward's tale isn't just a footnote in history books. It's been romanticised in numerous novels and is seen as part of the fabric of Anglo-Saxon culture within England. In fact, his role as a resister has arguably made him the literary basis for legendary figures as far afield as Robin Hood himself. But perhaps the most significant literary tribute to him is Charles Kingsley's 1866 novel, Hereward the Wake, Last of the English, which casts him as a noble warrior battling against the Norman encroachment, a sort of early-day freedom fighter. Yet, a less mythical but documented lineage for the Howard family is provided by a pedigree signed by Sir William Dugdale, Norroy King of Arms in 1665. This record traces the family's origins to the Haworth family of Great Haworth Hall in Rochdale, starting with Osbert Howard de Haworth, who was granted lands for his role as master of King Henry I's buckhounds. This assertion places the Howards' roots in a more verifiable historical context, away from the mists of legend and into the ledgers of service to the crown. However, the Dukes of Norfolk are far more remembered for their involvement in the religious history of the British Isles, rather than simply the specificities of their ethnic heritage. Thus, in the next chapter, we'll bring you up to speed on how the beneficiaries of Richard III's title offering helped sculpt the unique spiritual hierarchy of the modern United Kingdom. The Howard family saga is deeply intertwined with the religious and political upheavals of Britain's history, particularly during the English Reformation, when England dramatically split from Roman Catholicism under King Henry VIII. The Howards, as recusants, remained steadfast in their Catholic faith despite significant consequences, including exclusion from the House of Lords, and their religious stance consequently often marginalised them within England's power structures. However, the Howard family's connection to the Tudor court is further highlighted through two of Henry VIII's wives, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, both of whom were direct descendants of the Howard line. Specifically, Anne Boleyn, Henry's second wife, was the niece of Thomas Howard, the third Duke of Norfolk, while Catherine Howard, Henry's fifth wife, was the Duke's granddaughter. Therefore, along with their ties to William Shakespeare and a possible William the Conqueror connection, the Howard family is directly involved in the history of Henry VIII and his infamous marital issues. We'll call it that. Then, during the tumultuous times of the English Reformation, the Howard family emerged as one of the most prominent recusant families, steadfastly clinging to their Roman Catholic beliefs despite the prevailing Protestant rule. One of the most striking examples of their plight is Thomas Howard, the fourth Duke of Norfolk, who met a grim fate in 1572 when he was executed for his role in the Ridolfi plot. This conspiracy aimed to dethrone Elizabeth I and crown Mary, Queen of Scots, thereby reinstating Catholicism as the state religion. And Philip Howard, the 13th Earl of Arundel, further embodies the family's tribulations. He was confined in the Tower of London solely for his Catholic faith, where he ultimately died in 1595, and his steadfastness in faith led to his eventual canonization as a saint. Despite these hardships, the Howards displayed remarkable resilience and adaptability, eventually regaining their noble titles and estates. The restoration of the Dukedom of Norfolk in 1660 marked their re-established prominence, with branches like the Earls of Suffolk, Carlisle and Effingham maintaining their aristocratic standing. Now, the early 1700s saw Britain rife with religious and political strife, especially concerning the rights of Roman Catholics. The Glorious Revolution of 1689, which ousted the Catholic King James II in favour of the Protestant William III, intensified anti-Catholic sentiments. This was crystallised by the Act of Settlement in 1701, which barred Catholics from the throne, fuelled by fears that Catholics were more loyal to the Pope than to the British Crown. During this era, penal laws severely curtailed Catholics' rights to own property, hold office, and openly practice their faith, aimed at entrenching Protestant hegemony and quashing any potential Catholic resurgence. Amid these challenges, Charles Howard, the 11th Duke of Norfolk, emerged as a pivotal figure. Born into the Catholic faith in 1746, Howard renounced Catholicism in 1780 to pursue political ambitions, navigating the restrictive landscape that barred Catholics from significant public roles. By converting to Anglicanism, he secured a seat in Parliament as the MP for Carlisle, and later held a position as a Lord of the Treasury under the Rockingham administration. Yet, despite his religious conversion, Howard continued to champion Catholic emancipation, showcasing his complex stance on religious tolerance. And while he was a firm supporter of King George III and aligned with the Conservative Tory party, yet his career was peppered with progressive stances on issues like parliamentary reform and opposition to the slave trade. In stark contrast to his father, Henry Howard, the 12th Duke of Norfolk, was a devout Roman Catholic whose life and career were deeply influenced by the Catholic Emancipation Act of 1829. This pivotal legislation, championed by figures like Daniel O'Connell, finally allowed Catholics to sit in Parliament and hold public office, reflecting a significant shift in public sentiment. Henry Howard made history by becoming the first Catholic to take his seat in Parliament as the MP for Horsham shortly after the Act's passage, serving from 1829 to 1832. And Henry's political influence extended beyond his parliamentary duties. He was appointed a Privy Councillor, served as Treasurer of the Household, and played a key role in the coronation of Queen Victoria in 1838 as Earl Marshal. His dedication to Catholic causes, through support of charities and educational institutions, thus revitalised the Howard family's standing in British society and bringing them into the modern era, so to speak. Yet, the Dukes of Norfolk had one more aristocratic masterstroke to take, as they would meld in the 19th century with another noble family and increase their power even further, which is where we'll pick up the next chapter. By the mid-19th century, the Howard family had cemented their place as one of England's most prestigious noble families, linking arms with the illustrious FitzAlan lineage. This storied connection began when the Howards intermarried with the FitzAlans, whose roots stretch back to Alan FitzFlad, a knight from Brittany who journeyed to England with King Henry III. And the FitzAlans famously held the earldom of Arundel from 1267, a period marked by their considerable influence in medieval politics and society. Now, this powerful bond between the two families was particularly strengthened in the 16th century, when Thomas Howard, the 4th Duke of Norfolk, wed Mary FitzAlan, daughter of Henry FitzAlan, the 12th Earl of Arundel. This union not only melded two noble lineages, but also transferred the sprawling Arundel estates to the Howard family. The subsequent generations acknowledged this melded heritage by adopting the hyphenated surname FitzAlan Howard, a nod to their dual ancestry. For example, Henry Granville FitzAlan Howard, who became the 14th Duke of Norfolk in 1842, is a prime example of the family's enduring legacy and their knack for staying relevant. Upon inheriting the title, he and his siblings officially took on the FitzAlan Howard surname by royal decree, underscoring their deep ties to both the Howard and FitzAlan legacies and their ancestral stronghold, Arundel Castle. As a figure of considerable stature, the 14th Duke held the traditional role of Earl Marshal and was the last to claim the title of Chief Butler of England, a ceremonial dignity from times long past. His influence extended into the political arena, where he served as a Member of Parliament for multiple constituencies and wielded significant influence in the House of Lords. Transitioning into the 20th century, the Dukes of Norfolk faced a world vastly different from the medieval or Victorian eras, and they adapted to changing societal norms and economic landscapes, balancing the preservation of tradition with necessary modernization. Henry FitzAlan Howard, the 15th Duke, exemplified this balance during his tenure from 1847 to 1917. He presided over important state ceremonies, including royal funerals and coronations, which underscored the family's ceremonial importance in national affairs. And his engagement extended beyond royal duties into active participation in conservative politics and civic responsibilities, like serving as Mayor of Sheffield and then Westminster. Following in his father's footsteps, Bernard Marmaduke FitzAlan Howard, the 16th Duke, embodied the family's martial spirit. His valour in World War II earned him the Military Cross. Post-war, his focus shifted to the preservation and restoration of Arundel Castle, ensuring the family's historical seat remained intact for future generations. Then, Miles Francis Stapleton FitzAlan Howard, the 17th Duke of Norfolk, inherited his title in 1975, stepping into a role that had significantly evolved over the centuries. Faced with the daunting task of modernizing the family's estates, he introduced innovative strategies to diversify their agricultural and commercial ventures. One key initiative was opening the legendary Arundel Castle to the public, a savvy business move that not only provided a new stream of income, but also allowed the public to connect with aristocratic history in a tangible way. Now, Edward William FitzAlan Howard, his son and the current Duke, took over as the 18th Duke of Norfolk in 2002. He continued to build on his father's legacy, especially in his role as Earl Marshal, a position that involves overseeing major national ceremonies in the UK. This role put him at the forefront of organising and managing grand state events like the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II in 2022 and the coronation of King Charles III in 2023. But his son, and the heir apparent, has sufficiently deviated from aristocratic norms for us to take note of. Henry Miles FitzAlan Howard, Earl of Arundel, known professionally as Henry Arundel, was born in 1987 to Edward and his wife, Georgina Gore. Raised in the spotlight of aristocracy, Henry pursued higher education at the University of Bristol, earning a degree in economics in 2010, and his career took him into the realms of private equity and corporate finance, where he worked for prestigious firms in London. By 2019, he had co-founded Noble Insurance Group, stepping into a significant leadership role as managing director. More intriguingly, however, Henry's earlier years also featured a notable stint in motorsports. He raced under the name Henry Arundel, participating in competitions such as the Formula BMW UK Championship, where he notably won the Rookie Cup in 2006, and he continued racing in various series, accumulating successes and experience that highlighted his competitive spirit and drive. In 2016, he married Cecilia Mary Elizabeth dei Conti Colacicci, a noblewoman with deep familial roots in Italian aristocracy, in a ceremony held at Arundel Cathedral. Together they have 3 daughters, marking the next generation of the FitzAlan Howard lineage, and adding a dash of Italian flavour to the history of the legendary dynasty. Perched atop the misty shores of the island of Great Britain, Scotland stands as a land cloaked in intrigue and mystique, capturing the global imagination with its captivating landscapes and rich history. To the culturally uninitiated, it's a land that conjures images of the dramatic tales of Macbeth, the enduring legacy of the Highlander, the delightful sing-song of its unique accents, and the peculiar allure of black pudding. Yet buried within this collage of cultural and historical marvels, one family has decoded the mysteries that Scotland so coyly guards, the Dukes of Buccleuch. It's a lineage whose name resonates through the corridors of Scottish history with as much familiarity as the skirl of bagpipes across the Highlands, and holds sway over vast tracts of land, presiding over an estate encompassing an astounding 280,000 acres. With a dominion reflecting over 5 centuries of accrued power and prestige, this noble family has been part of the British aristocracy for many generations, with their multi-million-pound wealth and significant political influence consistently sending shockwaves through Britain's historical epochs. In this episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll share their full story with you, from this clan's bucolic Highland peaks to the family's sultry political intrigue, as we describe the wealthy British family that owns Scotland. In the lush rolling hills of Scotland, Richard Scott, the 10th Duke of Buccleuch, holds court as a leading figure among the nation's landowners. His real estate portfolio, expansive enough to turn the heads of seasoned tycoons, reportedly spans an impressive 200,000 acres. Rumours, however, hint at even larger numbers, with estimates reaching up to 270,700 acres, spanning the picturesque terrains of Scotland and England. And nestled within these bucolic expanses are some of Great Britain's most historic estates. Bow Hill House and Drumlanrig Castle are prime examples, shining as crown jewels in the Duke's property empire. Bow Hill, shining stone beacon of art and history, houses an art collection that could rival many established galleries, with works by Canaletto and Gainsborough. Drumlanrig, on the other hand, has welcomed a diverse array of guests from Bonnie Prince Charlie to Queen Victoria, though the family hasn't resided there since the early 20th century. A peek into the Duke's finances reveals a net worth hovering around £3.5 million. Yet, as it goes in aristocratic circles, this figure might just be scratching the surface. Some speculate his worth to be closer to £175 million, and that's not even accounting for his extensive land holdings. But the Duke's wealth is not solely land-based. He oversees an art collection that includes a Da Vinci, valued at an impressive £150 million. Additionally, he chairs the Buccleuch Group, involved in ventures ranging from real estate to gastronomy. Yet, despite his vast holdings, the Duke is not known for hoarding his wealth. In a move that defied aristocratic norms, he once contemplated selling a 3,000-acre portion of his Queensberry estate to the residents of Wanlockhead, a quaint Scottish village. This gesture showcases that even within the aristocracy, surprises abound. And his children, instantly born into the Scottish aristocracy, were raised amidst opulence and duty. Lady Louisa Montagu Douglas Scott, born in 1982, was the first to experience the high expectations of her lineage. Her brother, Walter John Francis Montagu Douglas Scott, the Earl of Dalkeith, born in 1984, was prepared to inherit the dukedom. His education likely included lessons in leadership and stewardship, and Lord Charles Montagu Douglas Scott arrived in 1987. The youngest, Lady Amabel Elizabeth Gabrielle Montagu Douglas Scott, and born in 1992, grew up under her elder siblings' guidance. And their mother, Lady Elizabeth Kerr, was an art patron who sadly passed away in 2023 and left a profound impact, instilling a love for art and philanthropy and continuing a legacy of culture and kindness in their upbringing. Now, while it's all well and good to hear about how this celebrated clan enjoys their millions and raises up their next generation, we're sure the real question you're wondering is, how did the Buccleuch family get so much power to acquire land in the first place? My apologies, but to answer your question, dear viewers, we'll have to turn back the clock a bit and envision ourselves falling into the verdant expanses of 15th century Scotland. In the Scottish borders during the 1440s, the Scots of Buccleuch began to etch their name in history, not just through lineage, but through strategic land acquisition. This journey started in the year 1116 in Peebleshire and saw them expand from Ettrick to Eskdale, showcasing their medieval real estate acumen. More than just landowners, the Scots were castle builders. They erected keeps like Newark and Akewood, and grand fortresses such as Hermitage. Branksholme stood as their power base, a symbol of dominance and a testament to their deep roots in Scottish soil. Next, the 16th century spotlighted Sir Walter Scott, knighted in 1590 and famed as Bold Buccleuch, and his audacious rescue of Kinmont Willie from Carlisle was a clear signal of the Scots' rising power and influence. The emergence of the specific Buccleuch name in 1552 marked an era of honour, especially after Wicked Wat Scott's valour at the Battle of Pinkie Clough in 1547. The ennoblement of his great-grandson as Lord Scott of Buccleuch in 1606 was a nod to the family's ascendancy, and it was during this time that their acquisition of the Buccleuch estates laid the groundwork for their future status as one of Scotland's largest landowners. Now, in 1606, Sir Walter Scott, the first Baron of Buccleuch, exemplified vision and leadership. His great-grandson, the second Baron, soon became the first Earl of Buccleuch in 1619, further elevating the family's social standing and securing a legacy of land and influence. Then, in the 17th century, the family began to engage in the classic old money playbook of strategic intermarriage, first by having James Scott, the Duke of Monmouth and Earl of Buccleuch, marry Anne Scott, the fourth Countess of Buccleuch. Indeed, this union was a strategic consolidation of land and power, contributing to the Scots' status as major landowners in modern Scotland. Next, the year 1684 saw the union of the Scots and the Douglases, another prominent family. This marriage was an additional strategic merger, further solidifying the Scots' landholdings and influence. By 1745, during the Jacobite uprisings, the Scots, now allied with the Douglases, played a significant role, and their actions during this period were not just about the present. They were shaping their future as key players in Scotland's landowning elite, stepping into the role of substantial landowners recognized today. As the 19th century drew to a close, the Buccleuch family, then storied guardians of vast Scottish lands since the days of Sir Richard le Scott, stood on the brink of an unforeseen challenge. Their centuries-old legacy, built on power and land, faced a critical test in the looming 20th century, a legal battle over inheritance tax valuation. This impending conflict, set to finally unfold in the 1960s, promised to shape the future of one of Scotland's most influential families, casting a shadow of uncertainty over their historic legacy. The story begins in 1812 when Charles William Henry Montagu Scott, Earl of Dalkeith, ascended the grand stage as the 4th Duke of Buccleuch and 6th Duke of Queensberry. This wasn't merely a title change, it was a pivotal moment in the family's storied history. A man of many hats, Charles juggled his roles as a Tory politician and an amateur cricketer with a flair that was nothing short of regal. His rise to dukedom in January 1812 was swiftly followed by a knighthood in the Order of the Thistle, a nod to the Buccleuch's esteemed position in Scottish society. Fast forward to 1875, and the Buccleuch estate found itself at the heart of a seismic shift in land ownership norms, mirroring the societal and economic transformations of the era. But the Dukes of Buccleuch, ever the astute navigators, leveraged their significant landholdings to enhance both their influence and economic standing. As we venture into the early 20th century, the Buccleuch family's land empire spanned several estates, including the aforementioned Queensberry, Langholm, Bow Hill and Bourton, with additional land near Dalkeith Palace in Edinburgh. At this juncture, the 6th Duke, William Henry Walter Montagu Douglas Scott, made his mark as a Member of Parliament for Midlothian. His political journey, however, hit a bump in 1880 with a rather unique pamphlet titled The Political Achievements of the Earl of Dalkeith, a publication featuring 32 blank pages that led to his electoral defeat against William Gladstone. The 6th Duke's untimely demise in 1914, at the onset of World War I, brought Walter John Montagu Douglas Scott to the fore as the 7th Duke. Thus, this period, marked by 2 world wars and significant socio-political upheaval, saw the Duke juggling mining interests and estate management amidst economic challenges. Now, the interwar years were characterized by a House of Commons dominated by the plutocratic elite, a trend the Buccleuch sons were part of. And the Great Depression of the 1930s wasn't kind to the Dukes either. The 8th Duke, Walter Montagu Douglas Scott, faced his share of challenges, including political controversies, notably his meeting with the German ambassador Joachim von Ribbentrop, which stirred significant speculation about his political leanings. Post-World War II, the 1950s offered a canvas for recovery and growth. The Duke, known for his liberal views, notably supported the admission of Hong Kong Chinese in 1988 and opposed the feared privatization of the Forestry Commission in 1993. Business-wise, the Duke's management of the Furness estate continued, with the family's business correspondence included in the Henry Robinson Luce papers. Yet, as the 20th century drew to a close, the storied Buccleuch family found itself entangled in a web of legal disputes that would stretch into the new millennium. At the heart of this intrigue was the will of Walter Francis John Montagu Douglas Scott, the Duke known for his sprawling estates and considerable wealth. The contentious details of his will sparked a series of protracted legal battles, with one of the most dramatic revolving around a £4.25 million claim for the recovery of a stolen Leonardo da Vinci masterpiece. This legal labyrinth, involving claims and counterclaims, set the stage for the 21st century, brimming with controversies that would challenge the Buccleuch legacy like never before. In the bustling early years of the 3rd millennium, the 9th Duke of Buccleuch, with an air of environmental sagacity, tried to embark on a journey of eco-consciousness, a path carved out by the teachings of Duke University's Nicholas School of the Environment. Here the Duke imbibed the wisdom of blending environmental policy with economic pragmatism, a cocktail of ideas that didn't always sit well with the traditionalist environmentalists. His stance, stirring a pot of controversy, highlighted the delicate dance between economic viability and conservation. The year 2010 would bring the Countess of Buccleuch, the family's art protector-in-chief, center stage. With a collection that would make even the most stoic art aficionado's heart flutter, think Rembrandt and Holbein, the Countess faced the Herculean task of art repatriation. This quest was ignited by the dramatic theft of Da Vinci's The Madonna with the Yarnwinder from Drumlanrig Castle. The painting's odyssey, from theft to recovery, underscored the vulnerability and significance of safeguarding cultural treasures. And the Countess's efforts dovetailed with a global movement to restore art to its rightful owners, a quest mired in legal labyrinths and diplomatic tightropes. Luckily for them, her commitment to ethical art ownership not only put the Buccleuch name in a positive light, but also underscored the complex politics of art repatriation. Meanwhile, in 2012, the 10th Duke faced an economic conundrum. To fend off the jaws of hefty tax liabilities, he made a landmark decision, selling off vast tracts of land and an array of art and rare books. This was more than a financial transaction. It was a recalibration of the family's legacy in response to the economic pressures of the day. 2 years later, the Duke steered the family ship towards the shores of renewable energy. This venture, a significant pivot from tradition, marked the family's embrace of sustainable practices. Engaging in renewable energy projects, the Duke showcased an alignment with more modern environmental causes, thereby driving local economic development and supporting community infrastructure. Roll over to 2018, and the 10th Duke found himself at the heart of a land reform storm in Scotland. Despite his initial resistance, he began downsizing his landholdings, a move seen as a potential boon for land reform. However, this decision was not without its controversies. Lady Charlotte Buccleuch uncovered family archives that cast new light on her lineage. These treasures revealed intimate details about the family's historical significance and their societal roles, offering a fresh perspective on the Buccleuch legacy. The archives unraveled stories about Charlotte Montague Douglas Scott, Duchess of Buccleuch and a confidant of Queen Victoria, and Walter Montague Douglas Scott, the 5th Duke, whose intriguing anecdote about a mysterious black box and a royal lineage claim added a touch of historical drama. Now, in a move that might remind one of a strategic chess game, Richard Montague Douglas Scott, the 10th Duke of Buccleuch, has continued to weave a narrative of stewardship and innovation in the 2020s. The Duke notably set a course towards a more sustainable and diverse business model with the sale of Langholm Moor land to oxygen conservation, marking a significant step in this direction, blending environmental progress with community benefits. The artistic sphere too has felt the Duke's influence. Boughton House, a jewel in the family's crown, buzzes with creative energy, hosting an array of artistic endeavours under his patronage. Parallel to the Duke's environmental and cultural strides, Elizabeth Marion Frances Montague Douglas Scott, the Countess of Buccleuch, carved out her niche in the realms of art and culture. Her leadership roles spanned prestigious institutions, from the Scottish Ballet to the British Museum. Her brainchild, the Young Walter Scott Prize, stands as an emblem of her commitment during her life to nurturing historical exploration and literary talent in young minds. And the Countess's patronage of the Royal Caledonian Ball, a whirlwind of fundraising and reeling, has aligned with her broader dedication to charitable and cultural causes. Meanwhile, her influence permeated the Buccleuch collection, one of the globe's most enviable private art troves, boasting masterpieces from El Greco to Gainsborough, to which she added contemporary flair. The current Earl of Dalkeith, another Buccleuch scion, brings a modern twist to estate management. Balancing commercial savvy with social and moral considerations, his approach has garnered acclaim, especially in harmonizing forestry and agriculture. As the horizon of a new era looms, the Buccleuch legacy, a complex interplay of politics, business, and intellectual advancement, awaits its next chapter. Despite owning so much land that it could make God reconsider his actions in the Book of Genesis, the Buccleuch family has attempted to steer their holdings with a distinct sense of noblesse oblige. If they have succeeded in accomplishing that goal, is up for you to decide. When you stroll through the cobblestone streets of West London, you're immediately enveloped in a world of sumptuous wealth and wallet-emptying luxury. Majestic townhouses stand tall, seemingly watching over avenues adorned with exotic cars and bespoke boutiques. Tourists and locals alike revel in the shadow of iconic landmarks, beckoning for a rendezvous under their gilded entrances. And yet this region, synonymous with timeless sophistication, velvet rope exclusivity, and a certain elegant flair, wasn't always the Instagram highlight reel of affluence you see today. Before the transformative touch of the old money aristocratic family we'll discuss here today, areas like Chelsea and Knightsbridge were far removed from the well-heeled paradises they are now. They were vast stretches of spotty farmland, modest cottages, and the far cry of livestock echoing in the distance. Indeed, they were a stark contrast to the cosmopolitan wonderlands of West London that have become playgrounds for the world's elite. Thus, who were the architects of this grand transformation, turning barren, underdeveloped lands into a real estate empire and setting the gold standard for opulence in our lovely capital? In today's video, we'll answer that and so much more as we give you the good, the bad, and the luxury of the Cadogan family, a lineage that shaped not just the geography but the very architectural essence of some of London's most iconic old money districts. The origins of the Cadogan mega-empire we know today begin in the mist-shrouded crags of Ireland in the year 1671. Here, history would see the birth of William Cadogan, a figure shaped for a destiny replete with intrigues and complexities. Born to Henry Cadogan, a barrister, the Cadogan paternal line had a background that wasn't limited to the courtroom. Henry's lineage, in fact, was tinged with the gunpowder and steel of the English Civil War. His father, William's grandfather, had worn the no-nonsense attire of Oliver Cromwell's New Model Army, an outfit that didn't just change the rules of engagement in Britain, it rewrote them entirely. And we mustn't forget the first matriarch of the Cadogan family, Bridget Waller, William's mother. Her own father, Sir Hardress Waller, had executed a different kind of verdict, one that led to the beheading of King Charles I and shook the very thrones of England. Thus, in a parallel vein to one of the other mighty old money real estate families of London we've discussed on this channel, the Grosvenors, who boast a military lineage reaching back to William the Conqueror, the Cadogans too had war in their blood. The key distinction, however, was the specific chapter in which the Cadogans had penned their military involvements, the tumultuous, landscape-altering English Civil War. Thus, it was as if William Cadogan, from his first breath as the leader in a centuries-long dynasty of familial power, was destined for grand maneuvers. As the wheel of time turned, the Cadogan name would be etched into an unexpected sector of society: real estate. Vast expanses of prime West London property would eventually come under their purview, a monumental shift from the families of military and political machinations, yet a continuation of a legacy of influence and grand strategy. You see, in the societal context of the 1600s and 1700s, land was more than dirt and grass. It was the currency of power. But William Cadogan and his contemporaries didn't merely hoard patches of earth. Their properties extended to County Limerick in Ireland, positioning them as strategic entities in the Irish theatre, although they were of primarily Welsh heritage. Destined for the world of law, young William found himself at Westminster School under the scrutinising eyes of Richard Busby. Yet fate had a penchant for irony, and the glorious revolution of 1688 scrambled all pre-existing plans. William of Orange dethroned James II, slicing Ireland into fiercely divided factions. The Cadogans, staunch Protestants that they were, threw in their lot with William of Orange. They didn't merely offer support, they amplified the ranks of the Army of the North. William Cadogan enlisted not as a common soldier but as a cornet of dragoons, a position reserved for the audacious. He was, after all, a Cadogan, and Cadogans don't just participate, they revolutionize. Furthermore, if ambition were currency, William was a tycoon. He gravitated toward the Duke of Marlborough, a maestro of politics and strategy. They were not merely allies but co-authors of a narrative that would culminate in William entering politics in 1705. Holding his post in the Houses of Commons until 1716, his tenacity was formally acknowledged. He ascended to the peerage, becoming Baron Cadogan, his deeds and alliances with figures like Marlborough cementing this honour. Thus, history transforming William to Baron Cadogan wasn't merely an upgrade, it was a metamorphosis. Years of cunning and daring crystallized into a title that had its own gravity in the halls of British power. Therefore, the Cadogan name was not only inked into the ledgers of British elite, but was poised to dominate the affluent enclaves of West London. But that transition, viewers, was only the prologue. Ahead lay a landscape of stone and steel, ripe for a new kind of conquest. Now, as the 18th century began, the Cadogan dynasty was on an unstoppable trajectory, each strategic decision marking another square on a chessboard of affluence and influence. A member of the family's marriage with Elizabeth Sloane in 1717 was thus more than a mere blending of two blue-blooded families. It was a quantum leap, a tectonic shift in the Cadogan family's destiny. You see, Elizabeth was not just the daughter of Hans Sloane, a man who served as physician to the British royals and was a cornerstone of the Royal Society. She was a passport to an empire of wealth. Indeed, Sir Hans Sloane's collection of items eventually formed the foundation of the British Museum, the British Library, and the Natural History Museum in London. And his 166 acres of prime Chelsea land were nothing less than a wellspring of future opportunities. For example, a pivotal moment would come in 1777, courtesy of Charles Sloane Cadogan, the first Earl Cadogan. With the kind of audacity reserved for men of his ilk, he gave birth to Hans Town, London's first new town, a revolutionary residential district designed with panache. Situated on the fringe of Chelsea, it was more than just property. It was a tantalizing hint of the urban sprawl that would soon sweep the area. Named after Hans Sloane himself, it epitomized the family's calculated ambition and keen sense of urban planning. See, by the 1800s, the West London scenery was ripe for transformation. Chelsea and Belgravia turned into magnets of sophistication, drawing in an eclectic blend of individuals, from writers wielding quills like sabres to industrialists crafting empires. The metamorphosis found its zenith in the 1830s and 1840s, catalyzed by particular infrastructure milestones. In 1836, the debut of the London and Southampton Railway added a touch of expedience, transforming the districts into commuter heavens overnight. A less glamorous but crucial endeavour saw Chelsea and Belgravia equipped with state-of-the-art sewage systems by the 1850s. A civil engineering marvel of its day, it elevated the public health standards, rendering the locales all the more alluring. The capital and wealth allocation flowed with a velocity that could rival the River Thames, manifesting in squares and houses of sheer opulence. George Bersavi's Belgrave Square in 1826 was such an estate, swiftly becoming London's piece de resistance of residential grandeur. Eaton Square, completed in 1855, wasn't far behind. It added another layer of prestige to Belgravia, swiftly becoming an aristocratic playground frequented by the likes of diplomats and the moneyed elite. Then, as if punctuating an already eloquent sentence, the 1880s saw the fifth Earl Cadogan bring forth Pont Street Dutch, an architectural style redolent of flair and grandiosity. It coloured Chelsea and Belgravia with an aesthetic as distinctive as a Cadogan family crest. But stagnation is not a term found in the Cadogan lexicon, and their emerald fingerprints can also be found on West London's landscape and horticulture. Particularly in Belgravia, the family's influence is evident in the hallowed grounds of Cadogan Place Gardens, a green oasis, a veritable Eden, nestled amidst the stony opulence of its environs. Laid out meticulously, these gardens serve not merely as recreational spaces, but as lush havens for urban fauna. It's more than just a garden, it's a manifestation of this family's ethos of excellence, mirrored by the adjacent equally exquisite townhouses. Whether offering spots for leisure, areas for flora and fauna to thrive, or even allotments that encouraged local cultivation, these spaces became an integral part of the city's evolving lifestyle, a lifestyle that the Cadogans were pivotal in defining. Now, in the early 20th century, the Cadogan found themselves at a historical intersection. Chelsea was undergoing a metamorphosis, morphing from a semi-rural idyll into a vibrant cosmopolitan district. This was a period of electric change. Artisans and bohemians flooded the borough, painting its streets with hues of creativity. Outside the immediate precincts of Hans Town, the Cadogan touch was omnipresent. Draycott Place began to resemble a stage set for elegance, boasting row houses and small mansions adorned in high white stuccoed facades and red brick exteriors. Cadogan Terrace emerged as an idyllic enclave, a suburban dream encapsulated within London's pulsing heart, complete with lush gardens nestled between residential jewels. King's Road, once a nondescript avenue, burgeoned into a hub of commercial allure, especially after the Second World War. It morphed into a byword for chic, home to boutiques, cafes, and the vibrant spirit of the swinging 60s. In Belgravia, Cadogan Place evolved into a magnet for opulence, a display of architectural prowess featuring neo-Georgian and Victorian styles. Sloane Square, once a simple square, transformed into a veritable epicenter of commerce and culture, replete with department stores and venues like the Royal Court Theatre. The adjacent streets to the east of Sloane Street danced to a similar tune, becoming boulevards of style and status, graced by art galleries and international embassies. It was as if the Cadogans were artists and their real estate holdings a canvas, upon which they painted a vivid portrait of what West London could be, more than just residential spaces, but crucibles of culture, commerce, and high society. Each building, each garden, and each commercial venture stood as a marker of their far-reaching influence. And these days the name Cadogan is synonymous with affluence and real estate might. The reigning patriarch, Edward Cadogan, 9th Earl Cadogan, inherited his title in the year 2023. This transition of nobility came on the heels of his father, Charles Cadogan's departure from the earthly stage. The year was 1966, when Edward made his debut in the world, born to Charles and the graceful Lady Philippa Wallop. Before immersing himself in the family's vast holdings, Edward donned the garb of a military man, an officer of the Royal Air Force, where his performance was nothing short of stellar. Upon switching from fatigues to boardroom suits in 2012, Edward assumed the chairmanship of the Cadogan Group. This monolithic entity reigned over a colossal 90 acres of London's choicest real estate, a portfolio boasting a breathtaking valuation of £5.1 billion, or roughly $6.4 billion, as of 2022. And the younger generation of the Cadogans is far from mundane either. Among them is Edward's daughter, also named Philippa, an interior designer and a viral socialite of significant repute in both media and artistic domains. In 2021, Philippa announced her engagement to fellow aristocratic heir Christian von Kelsen, also born in the year 1992. Specifically, Christian is the offspring of Mr. Hans von Chelsing and his wife, Virginia Anne Mackenzie, herself a descendant of the Mackenzie baronets, a lineage with roots that date back to the 17th century, dovetailing perfectly with Philippa's own esteemed heritage. And Christian himself has a genealogy that could rival a history book. He comes from a line that includes the Rawlinson, Kirkpatrick, and Seymour baronets, each a name etched into the annals of British nobility. Further amplifying the historical weight, he counts among his ancestors the Dukes of Somerset, a line that can trace its grandeur back to the Plantagenet era. Yet, as the spotlight beams on Philippa, it's crucial not to overlook another intriguing figure, Charles William Llewellyn Cadogan, born on the 2nd of October 1998. For the teenage Charles, Philippa's younger brother, growing up as a Generation Z aristocrat must be nothing short of a riveting juxtaposition of eras. Imagine, if you will, the curious blend of 21st century sensibilities with a heritage that dates back centuries. While other young adults might immerse themselves in the digital age, dabbling in social media and online gaming, Charles must often straddle a world where ancient tapestries share room space with cutting-edge technology. Indeed, Charles briefly grazed media headlines in 2018 thanks to a spirited jaunt that found him driving his grey BMW at a blistering 71 miles per hour in a 50-mile-per-hour zone. The young Cadogan explained that the anticipation of nearing the family's sprawling 2,800-acre Scottish estate, Snago Estate, caused him to momentarily disregard the law. The incident led to a £300 fine and the imposition of 4 points on his driving licence. Although the exact figure of Charles's current personal net worth remains veiled in discretion, there's no questioning the immense fortune to which he is heir. This is a sum that is calculated not merely in billions of pounds, approximately 7 billion to be more precise, but in the immeasurable currency of social prestige and historic stature. Thus, from their humble origins in Wales to their eventual settlement in Ireland and further afield to Albion, the saga of the Cadogan Earls unfurls like a chronicle, tinged with both valour and shrewd manoeuvring. Their history winds its way through the turbulent English Civil War, a period where loyalties were tested and fates sealed. The family emerged not broken but tempered, gaining both military distinction and social prominence. Fast forward to more recent times, and one finds the Cadogans not as mere survivors, but as potentates of an empire, landowners in the very epicenter of London's opulence.